Hi, everyone. It's Amanda Rieger Green. Welcome to Soul Sessions. Thank you for joining me. We're going to talk about something that will impact us for the next decade plus. It's Neptune moving into Aries. This hasn't happened since 1860, so it's never happened in our lifetime, but we can look back to historical events around that time. There was a tremendous amount of revolution happening in the United States and around the world. And there was a lot of change. Aries is the initiator of the zodiac, the beginning sign of the zodiac. It's a fire sign. It is a pioneer. It initiates something new, especially around our independence, our individuality, boldness, courage, and bravery. But Aries is also the warrior and the fighter. So there's a sense of doing something with a cause, fighting for a cause. And Neptune is elusive. It dissolves things. It's spiritual. It's watery. So you've got fire and water coming together in a very alchemical way. And when I say alchemical, that fire of Aries that comes from a place of fear, war, dominance, that we're always protecting boundaries and borders. And this is my country and your country, and rules, regulations that have a firm hold, or we've always had to fight to defend our territory. Neptune is going to begin dissolving some of that fight and changing the way we fight, quote unquote. And when I say fight, it's more about standing up for something greater, higher, and truer, because Neptune is about mysticism and transcendence, something higher, divine, something that is dreamy and ideal, this sense of one love, unity. And Aries is individualistic. So one of the main themes with Neptune, the planet of spirituality, alongside of some other things, madness, insanity, addiction, and I will talk about those things. But Neptune, spirituality, that's the main theme, clashing with, connecting with Aries, the warrior, the pioneer, the soldier of sorts, the individual brave soldier. When those two things come together, it gives us that spiritual, that sovereignty that I have referenced, and this ability to really feel empowered to go our own way, make our own decisions, and forge our own spiritual path from the inside out. So Neptune will be dissolving old fights, old ways of fighting, old ways of courage. And this goes back, I think, multiple lineages and lines backwards to man and woman on this planet, fight or flight mode, having to defend, having to fight, needing to protect and defend, and something shifting into a unity consciousness. But that shift begins within. And Aries is this call to action that asks us how our spiritual warrior is showing up internally and externally. And even when I say becoming a spiritual warrior, that feels limited to me because it feels outdated, but it's about becoming courageous in our spiritual truth and our spiritual consciousness, and moving more into inclusion versus division. But that inclusion starts within. And a practical way to think about that is I think about the energy of the 8 in numerology, and I think about 2024 and a lot of the themes of the numerology code for 2024. I have one of my older blogs from last year is the energy of the 8, and we'll reference that in the description and show notes because it might be very helpful to review, because the energy of the 8, basically it's like the law of attraction, the law of karma. Whatever is going on internally will manifest externally. The scales will be balanced in a way because the 8 is about balance, harmony, and reciprocity in a very infinite way. And that's Neptune in Aries. So that's a great blog to review just to go through some points, reflect internally in terms of what is shifting and changing within you. But think about it as what is being dissolved in me? And I think about heaviness around my heart, dogma, judgment, angst, frustration, any kind of barrier that creates separation or limitation. How can I dissolve that? How can I become easier, more loving, accepting, tolerant within myself in order to show up that way in the world? And this is not about not standing up for yourself or for causes that you believe in or exercising your agency, but it's the manner in which and the point of consciousness or frequency in which we come from, our point of attraction, our point of orientation internally. And that's what will affect the change within ourselves to see it reflected in the world and in a collective way. Because Neptune is farther out in the planets, it represents long cycles and it touches the collective. This transit, Neptune moves into Aries March 30th, 2025, and it will be in Aries until October 22nd of this year, 2025. Then it will retrograde back into Pisces for a short stint from October 2025 to January 26th of 2026. So from the end of October through the end of January, Neptune will move back into Pisces. We'll relearn some lessons, master some things, quote unquote. When I say master, I mean just acknowledge, clear some karma, have some transcendence and clarity. But after that, from January of 2026 onward through about 2039, it'll kind of go in and out of Taurus. It'll move into Taurus and then back into Aries. But from 2025 to 2039, that's the span of time we're talking about. We're talking about 13 years. So that's more of a collective shift, themes that will start to unfold and play out over the next decade plus. So this is not a quick transformation. However, when a big outer planet transits into another sign for that first couple of degrees, it's very poignant and often felt deeper, just like Pluto moving into Aquarius. We had Pluto go from Capricorn to Aquarius, back to Capricorn, back to Aquarius. That's what Neptune will be doing. So it's reorienting itself, which can feel confusing. And Neptune is confusing because it governs our subconscious. It governs the collective, our ability to engage with divine insight and divine guidance. So, through this time, and especially, I would say between now and when Neptune finally goes back into Aries, so February ish, February, March of 2026, heightened psychic instincts, intuitive hits are going to be imperative to pay attention to because Aries is about gut instinct. It's about listening to our gut and trusting it. When we feel the red flag, when we get the impulse, when we get the impression, do we trust it? Do we act on it responsibly and maturely, healthfully? Or do we ignore it, deny it, push it down, and then it comes back up and rears its ugly head? I think about toxic relationships and how some of us are prone to staying in toxic relationships much longer than we should, rather than acknowledging the red flags and the signs. And then we stay in it longer because of delusions. We think somebody's going to be better. We're going to get better. Something's going to change. But the whole time we keep eroding and diluting, and then we get further and further into the toxicity, the dysfunction, the disorientation, the madness, and the madness becomes normal. It's like the addiction cycle. And Neptune, by the way, rules and governs addiction, alcoholism, escapism of any sort. So, I will say this, if you are struggling in any capacity with an addiction, Aries, utilize that courage in Aries to make a decision and a definitive change to get the help you need or want to heal, want to live, whether you're struggling with anxiety and depression or it is alcoholism, addiction of any sort. This is the time to make a firm decision and then follow it up, follow through with your actions and have that faith and courage that something will transform. Neptune in Aries is very much about action based transformation, meaning putting your money where your mouth is, which what does that remind you of? The energy of the eight. In numerology, there's elements to, okay, this is what is changing, but I'm going to have to do or need to do my part in order to follow up with my dreams, with the change that I want to see in myself. I play a role in that. And Aries is about taking personal responsibility, becoming willing and open to affect our change through positive action. And this will be revealed to you more and more in the months ahead. There's a fearless energy that accompanies Aries oftentimes. It's not that Aries is without fear, but sometimes Aries is so instinctual and bold, it will jump in and do something without thinking it through, which can be a beautiful thing because they initiate. But there is an element of really and truly getting behind something you know deep down in your soul you believe in, and then having the courage to take the action to change or heal it. And what keeps coming up, and I think about addiction in general and how insidious addiction becomes, not only within the addict or the person, but how it affects friends, family, work, and it touches every area of life. Someone who has an addictive behavior or a challenge with alcoholism, addiction, just to talk about substances, I'm just using this as an example. But if you've ever been involved with someone who is an addict or alcoholic, or you yourself have experienced this, nobody externally will be able to convince you or encourage you to change. The change and the decision has to be your own. It's personal. And once the person who is struggling makes the decision to change, to heal, to confront the addiction or the disease, that's when the change begins to occur. And a wholehearted decision, and that speaks a lot to Neptune. Neptune is about wholeheartedness, doing something with your whole heart, mind, body, and spirit. This is 5D consciousness in action. And we'll in the show notes, we will reference the podcast I did around moving into 5D. And I have a great blog on that that talks about some of the energy and moving into the heart space of 5D. But 5D energy is very Neptunian in its highest form, meaning one love, feeling connected. So think about this. We have a massive epidemic of loneliness, feeling alone, loneliness, deep isolation. And Neptune is about connection, inclusion, fusion of energy, feeling at one with. Loneliness denotes separation. I feel separate from, I am separate from. And I think about Ram Dass when I talk about this, and what he said was, how could you ever possibly be lonely when you are never truly alone? How could you ever possibly be or feel lonely when you are never truly alone. And what he was referring to is if we believe we are all interconnected, there is a divine intelligence, God, higher power, the magic and the mystery of the universe, and that we are a part of that story, a unique part of that story. How could we ever believe that we are alone? And it is okay to feel lonely and identify with loneliness, but recognizing the difference between feeling lonely and truly thinking you are alone. Being able to delineate those kinds of deep truths within yourself and looking at your sadness, your depression, your fears, and really acknowledging them, but being the observer, that we are not the limiting fears and beliefs in our rational mind. One of the things as Neptune shifts into Aries, I think some of our rational mind will be changing because we will be moving into intuition, telepathy, psychic clarity, and flexing those muscles will be fruitful in a multitude of ways. This is a beautiful time of reinvention and self discovery. It's almost like we are reinventing humanity by reinventing ourselves in the highest form, in the highest light. And I know right now I sound very esoteric and pie in the sky, but that is the energy of Neptune. And if any sign in the zodiac can fight for new ideals to come into our collective consciousness and personal experience, it's the strength of Aries, the fortitude, the bold, courageous leadership of Aries to begin something new, to reinvent ourselves, and to explore new vistas of reality. We are moving into uncharted terrain. And that is scary because it's uncharted. It's like we're making it up as we go. We are becoming more active and conscious co creators, so the thoughts and limitations of our mind are important to pay attention to and to rewrite that code or stop ourselves in our tracks with the old stories we play or the limiting beliefs, especially as it relates to fear. And I reference this often about doing a fear inventory and writing down what you're truly afraid of. And the easiest rule, the simplest rule of thumb I have that around that is, what am I afraid I'm going to lose, or what am I afraid I'm not going to get? And that helps me identify what the true fears are. And I think it's a good time to write out your fears and then write an action plan. What actions can I take to begin to heal, eradicate, or reinvent these fears into something productive, something divine, something higher? There are going to be plenty of challenges with Neptune moving into Aries. I think a big one is spiritual egotism. There's already a lot of that, and it's human nature. I think some people really default into the position in which they believe they are a spiritual guru and people follow them. And I'm not pointing any fingers in any way, but a blind spot here is really moving into this superiority in your spirituality and then imposing those beliefs or falsely manipulating others into your beliefs. And that is a huge blind spot. So, checking your ego and your humility and your motivations over and over again, those are just good rules of thumb in general. But with Aries, there's a propensity in the shadow to have this self centered, ego based spirituality versus this all inclusive space of humility and divinity combined. So, messiah complexes, false gurus, just be aware of charismatic figures that they might pique your interest for a hot minute, but then you start to get a strange feeling down in the surface. And it's not about judging that person. It's about saying, what they said, oh my gosh, that was spot on. I can take that to heart. But following blindly or not listening to your own truth, that's going to be important. Also, impulsiveness, and when I was talking about trusting your intuition, your instincts, that is going to be the name of the game. Fine-tuning our instincts and our gut instincts and developing the intuition through that modality is, I think, going to be one of the greatest leaps of consciousness and psychic and extrasensory abilities in humanity over the next decade or so. But over analyzing, indecision, hasty decisions based in illusion. So, I mean, that is a tricky thing to notice is when you're truly following your instinct and it's a flow. It's like the energy of the eight, being in the flow. It's like call and response. Oh, I don't think I want to do that today. Okay, I'm going to cancel it and it's fine. And I'm going to follow through, communicate, be accountable. But I don't think that's in my best interest today. That is following your instinct rather than, "Oh, I can't believe they cut me off in traffic. I'm gonna pull up and I'm gonna yell at them." I mean, when it's so notice when things come from anger, aggression, impatience, that energy, that is not the instinct that we're talking about here. The Neptunian instinct is, I think I'm gonna take a left instead of a right. Why not? Let me just take a left. And let me give you an example of this that I'm laughing at because it's very benign, but it made me laugh my behind off this week. On Sunday, I take an early morning Pilates class on Mondays, and I was really sore and tired on Sunday. And I thought to myself, you know what? I think I'm gonna cancel my Pilates class Monday morning. And it came over me, and then when I said, "I think I'm gonna cancel it," it was like, "Yeah, because 'cause I'm just tired, and I wanna use Monday morning for different reasons," but it was a break in my schedule. I've been doing this Monday morning Pilates class for almost 2 years. So it's a routine I have. It's how I start my Monday mornings. Unless I've been out of town, I don't miss that class. So for me to think, "Oh, I'm tired. I think I'm gonna cancel it." Well, guess where I went? I went to logic and rationality. That's where I immediately defaulted, and I didn't catch myself. I heard myself say, "Well, Amanda, you're not gonna get to go to Pilates on Tuesday, and even though your body's tired, just push through. You need this extra workout. It's as part of your Monday routine." I could hear my voice. You hear it was emphatic. It was pushing. It was almost saying, if you don't do this, then you're not going to have a good day, or you're not going to be as in shape, or you're going to miss your workout. I mean, whatever the small voice in my mind was saying. So I started rationalizing. And so guess what I did? I didn't cancel my Pilates class. Got up Monday morning, headed to my Pilates class, left at my usual time. I leave in plenty of time. Well, there was a wreck and road construction and I could not get to my Pilates class. I was 20 minutes late. They don't let you in 5 minutes after. I haven't missed a Pilates class due to wrecks and road constructions, but as I was on the way and I knew I was gonna be 20 minutes late, about 30 minutes before I got there, the writing was on the wall, and I was like, "Shoot, I'm gonna be late. I'm gonna miss my class. Oh my gosh, I've driven this far away," and then I just started busting out laughing. I said, "Oh, universe, you tricky son of a gun." I was like, "Ha ha, funny you, joke's on me, eggs on my face." Because the day before, if I would have just canceled that class, listened to what my body and my instincts were telling me, I would have used my Monday morning, however that Monday morning space could have been used, rather than driving over an hour, not getting to go to my Pilates class, and then having basically 2 hours of time that, if I were thinking logically and rationally, were wasted. Like, I could have been using my Monday morning for something more productive. But instead, I just laughed. I ended up redirecting myself. I went somewhere else. I ran a couple of errands. I got some other things done. So I made hay. I made lemonade out of it, but I laughed because I recognized I didn't follow that gut instinct that was emotional, mental, and in my physical body. I rationalized. So just begin to notice in very seemingly mundane or small ways where you get gut instincts and they are mind, body, spirit aligned, and you begin to default into practical rationalism and over analysis. That is probably your sign that you are pushing aside your instincts and you're pushing against and using your human will in human will versus divine will. And there's a beautiful interconnection with Neptune in Aries of connecting with a power greater than you and a higher power flowing through you versus you creating some kind of power. It is all about surrender, which of course sounds like the energy of the nine in numerology and the themes of 2025. Let go and let God, surrender to win. But there's a bit of a consistency in the energy field with the nine, the eight, and the nine, and how those energies play together, and Neptune and Aries. And it's quite beautiful because it is paradoxical. It's about becoming softer and gentler, so instead of being this fighting, aggressive warrior, it's like we're moving into spiritual champions, becoming the hero of our own story, the champion of our own life, and it impacting ourselves internally and the world around us. So, in summary, let's just talk about some practical ways that we can listen better to our instincts and our intuition. A lot of that has to do with balancing action with reflection, meaning taking time to sit still, to go within. Also, calling on your guides and your angels and your soul for help. Hey, I don't know how to do this in this moment. I don't know what the highest answer is to this challenge that I am faced with. Help me. I don't know. Show me. I'm open. I'm ready. That conversation, not only does it create a spaciousness energetically, when we look to something higher and we engage with higher support, it will respond, and looking for those signs and synchronicities. And I would almost say expecting them. And I'm not talking about having expectations, but I kind of am spiritual expectations that I'm going to ask for divine help and the intervention is going to show up for me. And I'm going to know beyond a shadow of a doubt. I think that's a good cornerstone is show me beyond a shadow of a doubt the direction forward. And I also think about muscle testing. If you've never been muscle tested, our muscles are so incredibly intelligent with weaknesses and diseases in our bodies, and yes and no gut instincts. And I have been muscle tested multiple times, and it blows my mind what my body is able to tell me. And I have a practitioner, my acupuncturist. He does muscle testing. So I go get that done. So you can research that if you want to go have it done in a clinical setting. It's really great with the body and your biology and any diseases or ailments you may have, energetic blockages, belief systems. I mean, you can look at it on a spiritual level and a biological level, although I think they're very intertwined. But our strength in our muscles, like if you've ever seen or know about muscle testing, there's elements where you can put your hand out and somebody can push down on it. And when they ask you certain questions, whether they're true or false, your muscles will either be strong, like, yes, this is true, or your muscles will be weaker. There's a way to do it also where you put your index finger and your thumb together and you go to flick, and you can test it out with, is my name Amanda Rieger Green? And it's either you have to test it out. It's kind of like working with a pendulum. And I don't know the ins and outs of this and how to perfectly guide you on it, but do some research on personal muscle testing, how you can use your own muscle strength for your hard yes and your hard no. And a pendulum is a great spiritual tool to play with. If you don't have a pendulum, get one and play with it. And you can hold your pendulum and you just hold it in your hand and you say, "Show me yes." And it'll eventually, once you can connect your energy field with that pendulum, it'll start to move either right or left to signify yes and right or left to signify no. So you basically calibrate a pendulum and then you can use that. And pendulums are a little bit tricky. They're tricky for me. I don't use pendulums in my spiritual practice anymore. I did for a long time, but my telepathy is too strong. So basically, it usually listens to the desires within me versus the clear yes or the clear no. But if you're new to pendulums and you've never worked with one, play with it. You'll outgrow it at some point, but it's a really good resource. Or dowsing rods. Dowsing rods are another great spiritual tool for the yes and the no and frequencies and energies. So, muscle testing, pendulums, dowsing rods. Google, like, search that stuff and research it and find out what resonates with you because they're quite profound. This is also a time on a practical level to help with that instinct is to stay grounded. And I talk about grounding all the time, but this energy is going to need centering and grounding. So, any of your grounding practices, whether they are sitting still and breathing, meditating, going outside, letting the sunlight hit your face, bare feet on the ground, hugging a tree, wherever you can find your center, even if it is a handful of breath cycles, being able to do that regularly, multiple times a day, sit still and find your center. Insist that you are in your center and operating from your core being. I think that is one of those simple things we can do that is actually highly, highly effective. And I will share more about Neptune and Pisces as we move into the months ahead and energy is shifting and things are coming through. But I think the world stage is going to reflect this in the months ahead because Saturn will also join Neptune in Aries in May. And once we've got Saturn and Neptune in Aries, there's a big polarity shift and direction that we not only will sense, that we will feel more materially because Saturn does denote the responsibility in the material world and on the material plane. And Saturn is very karmic and Neptune is about busting up illusions and delusions. One last thing I do want to say in Neptunian energy, there's a fine line between genius and madness. And that's probably one of the themes that will be confusing when we go into our own insanity and delusions and believe that for truth and then impose it on ourselves and others. We're going to mess up. We're human. We all do those things. Being able to recognize when we're caught in a web of our own making, our own insanity, our own false sense of control or reality, and not centered in our truth. So, noticing that genius insight that comes through, the spiritual breakthroughs and the ahas versus the plotting, scheming, delusion. And I will say that the illusion, insanity, delusion, crazy making behaviors and feelings and energies that arrive, they're very small. It's very simple and small, yet it is complex and disorienting. And what I mean by that is think back to a time in your life where toxicity was pervading you, whether it was a job, a relationship, intimately with a romantic partner, family dynamics. Think about a time in your life that was supremely toxic, dysfunctional, and how what was the catalyst that helped you heal, helped you change? And the catalyst that helped you heal or change may have been that job you were in that was toxic that you didn't like and you were miserable in, you got fired. The catalyst may have been that the universe said, well, you haven't made the changes to leave the job because you keep thinking it's going to get better, or you like complaining about it because we get to a place in our delusion where we get very comfortable in the SHIT. Like we get it because we're like, oh, I can control this. It's the devil I know versus taking a leap of faith or making a bold change. Think about a time and what the catalyst was, or the catalyst was maybe there was a new job opportunity. So it could have been you lost your job or a new job came through because you rewrote your resume and you took a little bit of action, or you had been praying about it and asking for divine intervention and that divine intervention came. But think about a time when you were stuck in your own delusion and toxicity. What was the catalyst for change and what did you learn from it? Are there areas in your life right now that feel small, toxic, limiting, and keeping you playing small, trapped in the ego versus fusing the ego with the higher self? And Aries is related to the ego, and Neptune is related to the infinite divine. So, this is a time of fusing our human self with our spiritual source and recognizing that we are unlimited beings in an unlimited universe, receiving in unlimited ways, that we are capable of unlimiting and unbridling ourselves, our mind, this matrix of reality in order to create a higher consciousness that creates more inclusive, divine living, heaven on earth. And I feel like we are moving through this right now. And even though it's a bit murky and confusing and disorienting, it is purposefully and uniquely reorienting us to new ways of being and living that are much more loving and easy. Easy is my checkpoint these days. Is this easy? Or am I having to trudge uphill to get this done? And sometimes the trudging uphill is in my mind, and other times it's I'm doing something that I've really outgrown or don't enjoy or could delegate or needs to come to a mindful close and making the decision this chapter is ending. How do I maturely and responsibly close this out? So think about what is dissolving within and around your identity, your fears and your ego, and how can you embrace whatever calling from a higher plane is seeking you. Okay, everyone, may we all be on the front lines of this new frontier of consciousness and reality, and trust that we are exactly where we are supposed to be and divinely and uniquely equipped with the tools and resources we need to pave forward this new era of humanity at planet Earth. Be well, everyone.